Hey guys, welcome to the Checkup. I'm your host, Joshua Halstead. If you guys follow Faceless Empire, you've probably heard me talk about pop culture, horror movies, and maybe rant about the president a little bit. But this is a very different kind of podcast because this is just me having real conversations with people about mental health and the different ways it manifests itself in our lives and the things we do to kind of cope with it and to make our lives happy and productive. So this is the first episode of it. If you are listening to it and you want to watch, it's available to watch on the Faceless Empire YouTube channel. But please go ahead and listen on whatever podcasting app you use if that's where you're more comfortable. So I'm joined today by Laura Crawford, who is somebody I've known for most of my life. And she has a autoimmune disorder that I can't really pronounce. It's Hashimoto's thyroiditis, I think is how you say it.
You got it.
Perfect.
Well
All
done.
right. All right. So I'm going to kind of just start by having you explain what that is, and we'll jump off from there.
Sure. Sounds good. So it's only been a year since I've had the official diagnosis, so there's a lot that I'm still learning. But the simplest version of it is it's an autoimmune disorder. So essentially, my immune system is attacking, in this case, my thyroid. So instead of just attacking, viruses, bacteria, what have you, it's attacking like my own body cells. And with Hashimoto's, it attacks the thyroid to where basically it can get to the point where your thyroid just doesn't function like it's supposed to. And we all know that anytime a part of your body isn't functioning the way it's supposed to, there are certain, side effects, consequences, and things that can be issues.
Okay. So the first question, because I know that with some thyroid-related stuff, it can be. Does it affect? I don't know how to word it. Does it chemically affect like your brain? I know some thyroid conditions can like actually cause I don't want to say chemical imbalances because that's technically not proper, but cause depression or things like that. Does it chemically cause that?
So the thyroid is directly connected with the creation of basically all the hormones in your body. It's part of the endocrine system. So yeah, it has a huge effect on energy and mood and sort of all the things that those hormones regulate. Part of that is that your thyroid is key to sort of the energy processing, which a huge part of that happens within your digestive system. And so, again, another huge part of sort of the creation of all of the hormones that we need to balance everything out happens in the gut. And so when the thyroid isn't working well, then the gut starts not working well, and it kind of spirals into a lot of issues, including depression and mood swings and fatigue and stress and anxiety. Sort of all of those can kind of spiral from sort of this one main issue.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on it. It's going to make the episode not age as well, but I think it's important because of when it's going to air. So with COVID-19 going on, you would be considered immunocompromised, right? Or it would be. So does that? How are you doing with the concerns out there? Because I know I just have chronic asthma, which makes me technically at risk, but and I know I have an anxiety disorder anyway, but I have increased anxiety because of that particular thing. But having like an actual autoimmune disorder in that time, how are you doing with that?
So basically right now, because of all of the things that I have to put in place to support my immune system normally, I feel like overall I'm in a pretty good place. I focus on a lot of diet, a lot of oils, as well as sort of stress management and what have you. But I learned something in the past couple of weeks. And that is that high amounts of inflammation or like toxin buildup within your body, especially when you're dealing with autoimmune disease, can cause various symptoms. One of them being shortness of breath, which is a little terrifying in this COVID-19 world, considering that is one of the main symptoms. So I realized that because of everything that was going on, my stress level had gone up. I'm very much a planner, so my brain was constantly going about how to sort of move forward, what needed to happen next. And I really hadn't allowed myself to just level out and decompress, and had worked myself up enough with not enough physical activity and not enough stress management to where I couldn't get a full breath. And talked with my doc and kind of sorted a few things out, figured out that I probably don't have COVID-19, and realized, okay, I'm really going to have to make some adjustments during this time because I'm not out sort of decompressing with that, coworker banter or what have you, those normal ways that you might interact with people and sort of be able to let things go for a while. I've had to find other ways. And for me, a huge one has been an at-home yoga practice, which allows me not only to stretch and move, but it's a good opportunity for me to sort of stop and just kind of be in the moment. The breathing exercises that go along with that are really good for stress management for me. And oftentimes it'll be a good release. So sometimes I may be practicing and I'll burst into tears. And other times I fall flat on my face and I just start laughing in the middle of my living room by myself.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, that's, which actually, I mean, and you might do this too because you're very into theater as well. I'm very into theater. I will put on, like in the middle of the night when I can't sleep, I will just put on like people covering show tunes on YouTube, or like here's Ben Platt at Firestein's like singing a song or stuff like that, and I'll just like sit there. I'll put on like funny ones and like just sit there and laugh, or I'll intentionally be like, I need to work through emotions, and I'll just put on like a playlist of like just depressing as hell Broadway songs and be like, all right, this is what I'm doing. And like allowing myself like, and I it's weird, I guess, but like everyone has weird things to do to cope with things, and like doing things that allow you to actually process through your emotions instead of escaping them. Because I think that it's very often people just try to escape their emotions, which can also be like decompressing is great. Like the other night I was stressed out and I was like, I'm going to watch a Kevin Smith movie and laugh at raunchy jokes and not do anything. And like, that's totally valid, but like you also have to work through your emotions. You can't just bottle them up. But you're in New York, right? So
I am.
Epicenter of everything going on.
Oh yeah.
And small, my understanding, I haven't been there, I want to so bad. My understanding is really, really small living spaces.
More so down in the city. I lucked out and found a beautiful second story 3-bedroom apartment. So normally I have 2 roommates that are around and we all keep different schedules, so we rarely bump into each other, but it helps knowing there's other people in the house. Unfortunately, they're both back home right now, so it's me in an empty apartment.
Solid. I live with my brother, but he's working from home right now, and we're both working on a bunch of different stuff, and so like we're barely hanging out. Like we're mostly just staying in our rooms working on stuff. But I mean, I'm playing online games with people, like online party games and stuff, to try to get some semblance of socializing. I'm not a social person, but I need some socialization. So we're about to touch on for as long as I've known you, you've had a very specific diet. And it's a pretty healthy diet. Does that help your mental health? I know a lot of people suggest dieting for mental health help.
For sure. So the short answer is yes, it does help. Diet is a key portion to regulating life with an autoimmune disease, because so much happens in the gut, and because autoimmune diseases cause so much inflammation that can cause issues in the gut. Making sure that you're feeding your body things that are A, not going to cause more inflammation, and B, sort of heal anything that's been damaged, is key. And I mean, definitely have seen the effects over the years of both sides of that. And a lot of people look at my diet and they say, you're crazy. I could never do that. Like, how can you restrict yourself so much? And honestly, it's because I know that if I go too far out of those boundaries, I will end up debilitated in one way or another. And, certain foods will affect physically, and certain foods affect more emotionally. But so I recently reached out via a friend to a doctor of some sort. I don't know if he's more doctor or more like psychologist, somewhere in there. But basically he specializes in bipolar, because I had a absolute meltdown, like huge episode for me, and started sort of researching some symptoms, and was like, oh my gosh, like, is this something that I need to address and look into something deeper? And, had a good conversation with him. And, we talked about a lot of the factors that were possibly contributing to that one episode. And we don't feel like that's a road that we need to go down at this point, but the intensity of the lows just from simple food choices is incredible and not worth it at all.
Yeah, I went vegetarian for a year, which is nowhere near as restrictive as your diet. But I went vegetarian for a year, and literally just like one day I was talking to a friend, and we just had like a conversation about, which is the weirdest reasoning ever. We had a conversation about the fact that they didn't eat animals in the Garden of Eden, which is fair. And I was like, huh, actually nobody ate animals in the Bible until they just started, and then God gave them rules after that for how to do it. Maybe we shouldn't eat meat. I just went vegetarian for a year. And like, I didn't even try. I just was like, whatever. And just stopped eating meat for a year. And I thought it was going to be really hard. It was like really easy. And then like at about the year point, I was like, okay, I want bacon. It was fine. And then just like at the year point, I want bacon. But I want to get back to regulating my diet somewhat, because I don't do that. And I've found a lot of ways to regulate my mental health, and I've done a ton of work to make it a lot better. But I do think that a lot of the initial work I did, I was able to do because of the benefit of sort of the regulation that comes with just a healthier diet.
Yeah.
And getting less sugar and getting more of the essential things you need and less extra junk. Lately, I've been trying to lose a little weight. Well, not since quarantine. Before quarantine, I was trying to lose a little bit of weight. and I was just like having very little sugar. So if I want soda, it has to be diet soda, which I know has other health concerns. But, but I was starting to eat healthier to try to lose weight, and then counting calories and going for long walks and stuff. And I started feeling better throughout the day and more energized and excited. And I think it's like sometimes we really feel like we need a ton of food, like we're craving it, it's gonna make us feel better, and then we eat it and we're like, wait, I don't actually feel better. Like I need this whole pizza, and then you eat it and you're like, no, didn't.
Yep. Oh, totally. I've so been there.
I got a pizza the other night, and like one of my hippie pizzas with pesto and stuff, and like I ate it, and like I don't know, halfway through, it wasn't that big of a pizza, but like halfway through, I was like, I mean, I'm not going to put it in the fridge, but I'm going to regret eating this as soon as it's gone. Just the knowledge.
I mean, you were honest with yourself at least. But I can totally relate. If I had my choice, I would sit down with a bag of chocolate chips and a bag of some sort of potato chips or something of that nature, and I would consume the entirety of both of them in a sitting. And I would feel like crap afterwards, but yeah, that would be my choice if
Do
I.
you have does it take, this is where I was getting to, does it take work for you to maintain your diet? Because I know, like, for me, I have certain things stuck in my head just from, I guess, growing up. Like, we used to do movie nights all the time. We'd have popcorn or chips and candy when we watch movies, and it was this thing that we were able to do as a family. My dad worked a lot, so it was this thing we
Yeah.
could set aside a night or two, and he could work on his laptop. We could do a movie night, close the curtains, and do it. And but it's set in my brain like, well, if you're watching TV, you have chips or popcorn and candy and a
Yeah.
giant soda. And now, like, if I'm not, it doesn't feel like I'm having a movie night. And it's this
Oh.
whole like mental stigma I have to like remove to try to eat healthier. Do you have
Yeah.
to work for that? I mean, I know definitely because it makes you like sick and it brings you down and stuff, that it's probably a little easier to just be like, yeah, it's not worth eating that. But do you still have to work to maintain the diet?
Oh yeah. Right now it's a lot easier because it's just me and I'm not going out anywhere. So, I can cook at home, make my meals, and there's not a lot of added temptation. But it's when I'm hanging out with friends or um, instances like you're explaining where you would normally have these snack foods or, these particular things, that it gets a lot harder to not be like, I could just have a little bit, or, I'll just, one piece isn't going to hurt. And I know in my head that I'm absolutely lying to myself, but yeah, and it sucks. It can suck when I do make the right choice because I feel like I'm missing out on a part of that sort of socialization or, that portion of an event or what have you. Anytime I go out, I pretty much have to eat before I go anywhere. And then, I'll grab a sparkling water or something when I'm out, but there's not a lot that I can do that I don't cook myself. So yeah, all that to say, yeah, it's hard. There are some days where I'm like super strong and other days where I kind of pout and feel sorry for myself.
Do you and I actually don't know the answer. Do you drink at all? Are you able to drink?
um Legally, yes. Otherwise, um for my own personal body, no. It doesn't seem to have any tolerance at all. There are so many facets to autoimmune disease just in general that some people can handle like a glass of wine every once in a while, or a cider or what have you. Um, for me, at least for where I'm at right now, I don't seem to be able to do any with good results, which really sucks. Um,
Yeah.
because that would be nice to just go out and have a drink with my friends. So usually I'm the one who's like, yeah, I'll take the sparkling water because I can't do soda either. So
Always the DD then. Well, I guess maybe not in New York.
I mean, I'll drive around Albany, but do not make me drive around New York City. Someone will die.
Yeah, I mean, I drink a lot, but it's I started to I don't know why. I need to look at it, but I noticed that I started to like I certain things started to just immediately make me sick.
Oof.
Like I'm not drunk, I'm not even buzzed, but I'm sick. Like now my
Oh,
stomach just doesn't feel good. It's only a couple things, and I don't know what the difference is. I want to look at it, but I was curious just because I was thinking about that. Like you can't have soda, like with all different regulations. Do you can you can drink juice, right? Like straight juice or
so yes and no. fruit in and of itself is fine. Juice is highly concentrated because even if it's not like a concentrate, just because there's so much fruit involved in even one glass of juice, even that fruit sugar can be too much sugar. So like for me, I've definitely found that I can do it like a quarter cup to half cup of fruit, and that's about it. Maybe a little more if I pair it with like some nut butter or some sort of, nuts or something that kind of cuts that sugar a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been kind of the hardest one is there aren't a lot of options for curbing that sugar craving. And it's definitely a lot less than it used to be, but, even just grabbing an apple or, some fresh pineapple or melon is not really an option for me right now. So, yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah. I would not have that much self-control. But I honestly barter with myself on things where like anything where I know what the responsible thing is, I'll barter the reason why I should just ignore it. And it's in complete honesty. Like it's not even like, oh, you'll be fine. It's like you're gonna hate yourself later, but you need to experience the moment. It's FOMO.
And honestly, I feel like there's a healthy portion to that of just moments of saying, you know what? I know this is going to suck later on, but I also can't live in sort of that fear and anxiety of eating the wrong thing all day long. And sometimes you just have to say, all right, I'm going to go there. And you just know that you're going to have to deal with the consequences later. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm gonna transition a little bit.
Absolutely.
I'm deciding which order I want to go in. Because a lot of different things tick boxes of, I want to touch on that. Mm-hmm. I think I'm gonna start here. So I won't ask for specific details because I'm not a tool. But so you mentioned like having an episode talking about bipolar. So bipolar runs my family, and I think I might have it. But the issue for me is I have so many symptoms of so many different mental health things that as I've talked to different psychiatrists, psychologists, stuff like that, the answer has basically been, so you kind of, whatever you have manifests in all of these things. It's probably one of them. Manifesting in all of these things. But really the only way to know is just to prescribe you different medicines for different things until one of them works, which is like not a thing I want to do. That's not to invalidate taking medicine, like absolutely necessary in a lot of places. But for me personally, I kind of set out on like, can I regulate my mental health without it and see? And at some point I might have to get something light, some sort of light pill. And I should probably have an emergency pill, but I've done a lot of work on it. But just on the hint of having that episode or being curious about bipolar disorder, one of the reasons why, or one of the symptoms of bipolar that I have, which is I guess kind of the biggest one, is just like very quick mood swings, and almost like when I have an episode, like it's like my consciousness is in the back of my head watching what I'm doing, but not in control of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And for me, I want to be careful how I word it. It's often either huge swings to depression, huge swings to like the worst anxiety attacks, or huge swings to anger. I'm very good at, not very good. I'm pretty good at handling the anger portion. Like, I'm not ever going to hit somebody or anything.
Yeah.
Like, I just get, like, really upset and kind of yelly for, like, 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden I come back and I'm like, why am I standing here? Like, I know I word everything funny. I'm not, for listeners, I'm not trying to downplay it. It's a very serious thing. I just use comedy as a defense mechanism. But, but Chandler Bing. But in that moment, like having that episode, were you like aware and in control of what was happening, or fully like blacked out, or how did it manifest?
So when I have really intense episodes, I I would say that I am in control in the sense of like I'm fully aware of what's going on and my surroundings and how I'm feeling. The feelings of not being in control are kind of surrounding just the intensity of it, and knowing that a lot of what I'm feeling and what's going through my head is probably blown out of proportion compared to what it is. But I have no way of getting back to that point um, without just kind of letting things run its course in a sense. Um, and so, a lot of times there will be valid issues in the midst of that. A particular grief or an anxiety that is very real for wherever I'm at in my life, but because of things being out of whack or whatever's going on inside of my body or whatever's sort of happening, it's huge and sort of unmasterable, if that makes sense. So yes, I think I know when I'm having a really intense episode because it's almost impossible for me to even begin to talk myself down from it. And so those are key moments when I know I have to reach out to somebody else, or else I'm not sure I know how to sort of dig myself back out of that moment.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
that sounds pretty similar to kind of what happens with me. Like I'll click into like more awareness and control of myself like halfway through an episode, but
mhm,
it's like coming into awareness of what's going on, but not knowing how to like de-escalate,
mhm,
or calm yourself down, and then also being aware that like, which is just a problem for me in general because I'm a talkative person, but like not being aware how long you've been talking to someone about it, or not being
oh,
aware like like the length of time or the tone of your voice or
yeah,
anything. So you just like come into the center of it and somebody's reacting to you and you don't really understand what was happening before that point.
mhm,
Um, I've gotten a lot better at handling it.
mhm,
And I've also gotten a lot better at knowing who I can kind of like 99% of the time, I can keep whatever's going on in. And what'll happen is I'll like get in a 5 minute fight with Michael, who already knows what's happening and just kind of grunts through it until it goes away. Like,
oh,
like,
yeah,
I've gotten to where like I know people that I can like call on the phone or FaceTime or whatever if I'm having an episode where I can be like, "Hi, this is happening. I'm gonna rant now for a second," and get it out, right? Or have my episode and then move on, so that
yeah,
I'm not directing it at other people. Because when I was 18, 19, when I first started working, I mean, I didn't have like really bad episodes at work, but I would have I'd have really bad issues at work under stressful conditions, and I wouldn't be able to kind of compartmentalize and shift it to different parts of the day or different ways of dealing with it. I
mhm.
guess is the best way to say it. I don't know. It's weird to explain. But so when you have episodes, does it manifest as like depression or anxiety or anger or something else entirely? Or
I'd say for the most part, it probably manifests more as a depression. It tends to go there first. A depression with sort of a mixture of an intense fear. Um, and I guess you'd probably categorize that under anxiety. But I've I've had episodes where I'm terrified that I'm literally just going to be murdered in my bed. Is there valid proof that that's going to happen? Well, sure. I mean, those things do happen, but I don't have necessarily a reason to be fearing that. So definitely irrational fear will sort of crop up within that. And again, I can recognize that it's an irrational fear, but it's hard to get to a point where it's no longer so intense. But yeah, I'd say depression is probably where I go for the most part. Just really low lows of generally in those moments, a lot of like past incidents or past pain, past grief will all start cropping up, even though they're things that, maybe I've had time to process and I've done a lot of healing in. They'll start cropping up and being like, hey, remember me? Like, no, go away. I don't want to see you. But yeah, so usually those moments involve a lot of sort of tears and rehashing things that are, big and painful. So.
Yeah, that definitely happens a lot for me. I get very. I was gonna say I get very bad depression, which is a lie. I have very bad depression. I have to start using proper wording for things when I talk about. By the way, self-actualization and then actually using the proper words for things for what you have has been one of the biggest helps for me. Like it's the most cliche thing in the world, but nobody does it.
Yeah.
Like everyone says, like the first step to working through a problem is admitting you have the problem. I'm not calling mental illness a problem, but like that idea is very fair. Like saying, "Oh, I get depressed sometimes," when you have clinical depression.
Yeah.
It's just actively wrong. You don't get depressed sometimes. You have depression.
Yeah.
And so like I have to start. It's a weird tangent, but I said I get depressed, and I was like, that's not the right way to do that. I'm calling myself out publicly, which I'll probably do 50 million times throughout the course of the podcast. But my depression ranges from like I'm always somewhat depressed, and if I have like, this is the most sad thing ever. If I have like a happy moment, halfway through the moment it turns to a depressing moment. So like I'll go out and like let's go have karaoke with friends, and halfway through the night like my brain will be like, notice how everyone else is having fun without you, notice how they're laughing at each other's jokes, notice how that person sang their karaoke song better, notice how those two people are ignoring you and talking to each other. And it's like all these things to this moment of like my brain just being like, oh, you're only here because like they're humoring you. Like anytime I'm having a good moment, it's brought down either with that, which is partially anxiety, partially depression. It'll be brought down with that, or just be like, hey, remember that bad thing you did 15 years ago? You don't deserve to have friends. Like, which is an absurd thing when you say it out loud.
Right?
But like in your head, it makes sense in the moment.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when I get those, like most of my friends kind of know, and most of my friends have mental illnesses of some kind, and so they're able to kind of relate or whatever, and I can kind of push through it. The scariest moments, I'm gonna get really dark here. The scariest moments are lying in bed at 2 a.m. and all of a sudden, like wanting to kill myself. And like I'm never going to, because I've worked out how to take care of myself, and it's not. It doesn't happen very often anymore.
Yeah.
But like the scariest moments are waking up at 2 a.m. and like being basically unable to move, and just like simultaneously like wanting to kill yourself and then being terrified that you will, like at the same time, and having to like deal with that or cope with that. I told you it was gonna get really dark. But the reason I bring it up is because I'm curious. I've talked to you about depression a little bit, and I post about mental illness reasonably often. So I'm sure you've seen some random stuff on my Facebook and stuff. But
For sure.
because you were talking about depression, and because it has to do with your autoimmune disorder, how obviously you don't have to get as deep and personal as I did, but how severe does it get, and then what do you do to kind of work through it?
Sure. I think the regular is pretty manageable. Sometimes it just feels like an overall melancholy, which I'm comfortable with. Whether or not that's healthy or not,
Same, girl, same.
I'm really okay with that. I and so on the regular, I recognize that it's there, and you kind of just move through the day, and a lot of times just keeping busy, not to an unhealthy point, but just moving throughout the day and doing what you need to do is enough to kind of keep it from spiraling. For for when it gets pretty intense, I've definitely been to those places of I really just don't want to keep going anymore, because this hurts too much, or this is too scary, or I don't know how I'm going to push through all of this. And so, yeah, it looks a lot easier to just kind of end it. Now, for me, I have a very low pain threshold, so figuring out how to actually do that, I think, is not really on my radar. So I think that's my saving grace, is like, nah, that just doesn't sound pleasant. But yeah, what that looks like. I think most recently that's curled up on the floor in tears, sobbing over who knows what, and not knowing if I'll stop. It's that intense pain and grief sort of that just grips your chest, and you really don't know if it's so consuming, that you really can't see anything else. And yeah, you're just kind of there, and you don't really know. Sometimes it's odd to try and picture life on the other side of it, even though somewhere in the back of your head this is just a moment, and you've been here before, and you push through. Honestly, what I've realized in those moments, because I'm not able to sort of push through on my own, and push through is not the right word, because I'm not able to sort of yeah, I can't bring myself out of that. That's usually when I have to reach out to a few key people, and usually that looks like a text to one or two, maybe three people that I know I can just be flat out real with, and say, I'm not okay, I don't know why, and I just need somebody to know. And honestly, for me, that's a huge part of coming back to sort of truth and health and stability, is just knowing that somebody else knows the intensity of what's happening to me right now. And a lot of times, that will either bring back a couple of texts that say, hey, I love you, I'm hugging you, I'm praying for you, depending on who I've reached out to. And then sometimes it'll turn into a conversation, and kind of depending on the moment, will depend on whether I just need that reassurance, or if I'm in a place where I can actually vocalize what is happening in my brain, and which will oftentimes bring it back to a place of a normal intensity, I guess. So yeah, I guess in those moments, there are a lot of tools that I use for mental health, but when I just can't push past it anymore, I know that I have to bring somebody else in, or I'll just keep spiraling through the same thoughts over and over and over again. So
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the support groups. A support system there. Because I think it's really important. I think also people with mental illness, especially I think with depression and anxiety, feel like a burden, even when they're being totally normal. And then it's next level when like something's going on, and you need something. And what I've discovered is 99% of people are not at all burdened by it. They don't care. Like, they want to help you.
Yeah.
Like, they can do little things to help, right?
Yeah.
And the people that do things intentionally that make you feel like a burden maybe shouldn't be there. But it's a very interesting thing because, I have to remind myself a lot when something's going on that it's not a burden to other people that like I have something going on. And part of that is that I just started doing things to help other people when I'm doing okay. So that I can, in my head, which is a terrible thing to have to do. But then when I need something from somebody, I reach out to people who I just do things for anyway. I'm going to do things back and forth. Because then in my head, I have reasoned it. I've logicked it to they owe me helping me.
Yeah.
Like, which is a terrible thing to have to do. And it makes you sound like a terrible person, but it's just sometimes you have to logic things in your brain to be able to rely on that support system, but I joke about this a lot, but it's true. I helped my childhood best friend find his calling because I talked to him just like he gives me psychological help just so often that like I was just talking to him once and he just started laughing in the middle of a conversation. Like, what? He goes, "I'm gonna be a psychologist." And he's like in school to be a psychologist. Like, he was just like having a conversation and he was just like, "I'm gonna be a psychologist." And like I always like, and he knows like I always like a burden calling him. And he's like, "Dude, I love hearing you complain. Like, complain about your life and I'll walk you through why you're an idiot and wrong. Just call me." But it's very helpful because I'll just straight up, and he's aware of it, and he does it to me as well. Like, if he's having something, but we'll straight up just call each other, and so just answer, hello, and be like, "Here's what's going on," like, like no lead up, just I'm unloading, and we'll do it to each other because we can, and we know that we're not going to judge each other, and we know that we're not going to have those issues. And I think that support system is very important. And I think it's far too often we convince ourselves that we don't deserve that support system or we shouldn't rely on it. We're a burden, which, like, from the audience, you're not a burden for needing help. Get help. Reach out to people. And if somebody tells you you're a burden, unfriend them. Because it's just not. It's not okay.
So I have a quick question for you, if I can.
Yeah.
So you touched on reaching out to other people, especially when you're feeling like you're in a good space. Have you ever found, because this is something that I found, have you ever found that maybe when you're having an off day or, you feel like you could kind of slip into something, have you ever found that reaching out to somebody else and sort of training your focus on something else can help to bring you out of that?
Yes. Yeah. And yes, I think the downside of it as an adult is that people are busy. Like as a teen, it was pretty easy because once you're off school, nobody does the homework anyway, so we just call each other and go do things. It's harder as an adult because like everyone has so much going on, and I try to be I try to be really open to hang out with people and go do stuff. I also host multiple podcasts, work full time, write books, make music, make like I do a million creative things because it helps with my mental health. So I'm constantly working on stuff.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
have friends that'll be like, "You watch a lot of TV," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's because it's on while I'm doing stuff." Like I'm never sitting there just watching a movie unless I'm at the theater,
Mm-hmm.
which is technically researching for one of my podcasts. But like I'm always doing stuff. I'm always creating something. And it's
Yeah.
gotten to the point, which I should probably regulate, where I can't read because if I'm reading a book, it's time I could be using to be productive. Like
Yeah.
it's which is a weird. That's not healthy. There should be times to just chill.
Yeah.
But I think like my dad and my brother are not in an extreme sense, but very. I mean, we jokingly call them workaholics because they love to work. So they bring their work home. They work extra hours. They're always working on stuff, but it's always work. Like it's from their job, and they just
Yeah.
get really into their jobs, and so they just go above and beyond and are constantly working.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a workaholic, but I hate my job, and I've hated every job I've had, and I refuse to bring it home. I will never bring it home. I'm a workaholic because I go to work to get my paycheck, and then I come home and I'm like, okay, need to write a script for this, need to direct the episode of that, need to record this, I need to like all these different things and kind of composite them together to create some semblance of like normalcy.
Yeah.
Which I'm I haven't announced this on Faceless Empire, but I guess I am now. So I'm making which I'm making a sitcom, a podcast sitcom,
Yeah.
and I have not even written the pilot. Well, that's a lie. I've written the pilot 15 times. So eventually it'll be done. I just hate every pilot that I suck at pilots, but I've been working on it and I plotted out the entire series from start to finish, all the twists, everything that happens to the characters, all of the episodes and messages and lessons and all these different things, because every episode's going to have a really serious topic that it's talking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is I want the characters to be very real.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm writing in these scenes of them dealing with their mental illness and having character arcs that are just these personal character arcs about mental illness.
Yeah.
But which is very therapeutic. So if anybody's a writer, write about your mental illness. It's comforting.
There
It
you
helps
go.
you through things. But the reason I bring it up is because as I've been trying to work on it, I'm doing so many things on quarantine that I keep being like, I'm doing this sitcom and I'm really excited for it, and then just like I have nothing to show for it but a plotted out series, like nothing's scripted. And the reason I bring it up because you're also a very creative person. I don't know how often you just like create for the sake of creating,
Mm-hmm.
but do you ever get to a point where you're really excited to create something and then you just don't you can't focus on it to do it, or you don't have the time, and so you're just kind of like, I'm doing a thing eventually. And do you focus on creation to kind of cope with mental illness and depression and stuff?
So I have to be very careful because I have a huge creative side, but there's also this part of me that is very sort of productivity oriented. So part of that like initial panic attack, problem breathing in those first couple of weeks was me going, I've got all this time. I have to use it well. I have to fill it with things. I have to do all of this stuff so that I have something to show for this time. And basically just stressed myself out to the point where I was like, well, now I can't do anything. So I guess for me, I think the healthiest thing has been learning to be okay with slowing down, honestly, with allowing myself time to just be. And, I'm super excited to have this time. I've been taking some webinars for different subjects that I've wanted to learn for a while, and all of a sudden I have the time and these really accessible resources. And so that's been really exciting. But even like on a daily basis, I get up and sometimes I'll get on a roll and I'm like, I'm going to clean this and I'm going to do the laundry and I'm going to work on this project and I'm going to make sure that I take time to paint and I take time to work on this craft. And so, as odd as it may sound, being someone who works in the arts and considers herself very creative, it's hard for me to allow myself to just create for the sake of creating and not have it be part of my to-do list. So that's something that I have to really balance out, because I think there is a great outlet in, just sitting down with a paintbrush or something of that nature, but making sure that I'm relaxed while doing it, and that it is a stress reliever and not just adding to the anxiety. So.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. The other day, I'm side trailing a lot, but I think that'll make the podcast more fun.
Yay!
I don't know. I'm sure people will tell me. But the other day, I was late at night. But I just was like, I miss theater. I haven't done theater since like the couple terms of college I did before I moved around a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss theater because I used to be on stage just all the time. Like I used to always find ways to be on stage, improv or regular acting, and I would make movies with friends. So I was like always acting and creating and stuff. But I love being on stage. And I was like craving theater, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I just looked up this monologue from a Ben Affleck movie. I was like, I'm going to memorize this, and I'm just going to perform this as a monologue that you would do at an audition and put it on Facebook. And I literally just recorded this monologue from a Ben Affleck movie and put it on Facebook. Like, I don't know.
I love it.
It was at like 11:30 or 12. Like it was late, but it's a really good monologue. But it was just one of those things where it was just kind of like, find little things you can do that are going to make you feel happy, or be a little bright spot in your day, or going to make you feel more at home or more comfortable. Like the only place where I don't have anxiety is on stage.
Wow.
So I created a way of being on stage and home.
Yeah.
Which I do. I go and do karaoke a ton just because it's like, well, I'm on a stage and I only do Broadway songs. So
yes.
it works. I found a karaoke DJ in Vancouver, which is where I live, that does he has like every Broadway musical, like almost every Broadway musical ever. Like I was going through and just like, do you have this? Yes. Do you have this? Yes. The only one he doesn't have anything from the last 5 years, and I'm so sad.
Oh.
I'm so sad because If I Didn't Believe in You is like my go-to song, but nobody has last 5 years on karaoke. But he has all of Jeff and Hansen.
Nice.
Did a lot of Jeff and Hansen. I refuse to do Avenue Q in public. Feels like a bad idea.
You have to have the right crowd for those songs. I will absolutely agree with that.
I just feel like, removed from context, just like everyone's a little bit racist, probably doesn't hit the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Most of the songs are, yeah.
Yeah. I think it'd be funny. The only one that I think would be funny to do in public is The Internet Is for Porn, just because it's so outlandish. I think that it would be hilarious to do that in public and just watch people's faces. It's all at bars anyway.
So my first introduction to that song, slightly off topic, was the song being sung by, I believe they were World of Warcraft characters. And back then, I was coming from a very conservative, very sheltered background and had really not been introduced to a lot of like anything outside that world. I didn't know what to do with myself. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that was my first introduction to Avenue Q.
That's an interesting introduction.
It is. And then I went on to work on the show. So there you go.
Such a good show.
Oh,
it's funny
so
that
good.
I think rabbit trailing is good. I think it provide some humor and calm.
Yeah.
Like if we're diving into all the dark stuff, might as well end with some positivity, right?
Right.
But it's funny. I think people talk about like the generation defining musicals, and everyone always thinks it's some like big sweeping epic musical, and it's usually like the Avenue Q's of the world. Like I will say, I think Wicked and Avenue Q kind of both kind of equally represent a generation of theater.
Yeah.
But then Book of Mormon just dominated for a decade. Like Book of Mormon is just that is the generation defining musical, and now the new kids get Dear Evan Hansen and Be More Chill, although Be More Chill closed. But Be More Chill so good. So good. But I mean, I think that the funny ones end up being a lot more generation defining, and I think resonate with people more because you get like for all of the like raunchy and outrageousness of Avenue Q, it still ends on this really like powerful emotional note. And
Oh yeah.
Book of Mormon does the same, even while being essentially South Park on stage. And going back to the '80s, like Little Shop of Horrors, I think stuck so well in public consciousness.
Yeah.
Controversially, maybe better than Phantom and Les Mis as far as like overall impact on the community. I know that Phantom and Les Mis lasted longer, but more people perform Little Shop. More people have seen Little Shop done live, and
Yeah.
like, but it's because it's this goofy, silly, like making fun of horror movies comedy that also has like a ton of heart.
Oh
You
yes.
know, and you can really connect to the characters. Where I think it's harder for a lot of people to connect to, like, unless you're from a specific background, it would be hard to connect to Jean Valjean super deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Or to Javert. Like I can connect to Jean Valjean, I think reasonably deeply in the regard that like I'm religious. I grew up religious. I grew up in I'm less dogmatic now, but I grew up in a reasonably dogmatic environment, and
Mm-hmm.
so that bartering with God and trying to like be your best to secure afterlife and then finding actual
Oh yeah.
philanthropy in that is really resonant. But
Yeah.
like if somebody grew up atheist with no dogma, they're not going to connect to the religious themes of Les Mis as well. So they'll relate to the character arc, but not
Mm-hmm.
the overarching themes where anybody from any background can relate to Seymour or Audrey.
Yeah.
Um,
Where, and I think you run in with Les Mis, it's a far more, because of the themes, it's a far more intense show. And not everyone enjoys that. I mean, personally, I like something that's really deep and moving like that, but even Les Mis, I've barely been able to get through because it is so intense. So shows like Avenue Q or I'm a huge fan of Neil Simon's plays
oh
because
yeah.
they're so much more accessible because of the humor, but they leave you walking away with quite a bit to think about, whether you realize it or not, because they've so skillfully woven those themes amidst all of the laughter and ridiculousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Neil Simon is amazing.
oh yes,
I do you have Broadway HD?
I don't.
It's I keep going and subscribing for like a month and then dropping because I just there's limited supply, so you watch everything on there or everything you're
Yeah.
interested in, and then it's just kind of like, all right, now I have this. But the ones they have that they do are amazing. But they did it's not Neil Simon, but they did this play Buried Child, which is just the most depressing play ever written. It's amazing, but it's so bad.
Oh
It's
my
so
gosh.
depressing. And I didn't even read the thing. I mean, Buried Child clued me in like, oh, it's a drama, but I do
Mm-hmm.
well with dramas because I write drama. So like, yeah, whatever. And it has Ed
Sure.
Harris on stage. Like Ed Harris is the star of it, and I was like,
Oof.
cool. Oh, it's so depressing, and like
Oh
a lot of what they have on there for like straight plays is just like the most depressing thing they could think of. Like they have all these great productions of musicals that are fun, different kind of, and then their straight plays are almost entirely like they have the importance of being earnest, and then like almost everything else is just like, okay, buried child, where the dad thinks that the wrong kid died, and yeah, that's not a spoiler. That's in the first like 5 minutes. That's just a setup for the play.
Oh,
Um, like that, they have this series of one act plays. It's just like about a family who like a bunch of the people died in 9/11, and it's just like them family holidays without part of their family. Like always, like it's just a bunch of plays like that, and then their musicals are like, here's Memphis and Gypsy. And it's like, well, that is the biggest disparity between two kinds of plays.
oh my gosh, yes.
There's like I think there's only like one comedy straight play, and the rest are these like super serious dramas. And as opposed to almost every musical that they have is a fun upbeat one, and then like Les Mis, I guess. But like that's the only even close to depressing one.
Wow.
It's a like Memphis is probably Les Mis most depressing than Memphis, I guess, which really isn't depressing, but I guess race relations can be. Uh, but yeah, there's an interesting sidetrack. I think it's good. I think it's good.
Yeah,
It brings some humor and some light.
absolutely.
Let's end with this. So I want to end every episode with this. What are we touch on it a little bit, but what are some tips and tricks you've found in your personal life that have helped with your depression, anxiety, those kinds of things?
Sure. I mean, I touched on yoga, and I honestly have never stepped foot in an actual class. I found a gal on YouTube, Yoga with Adrienne, and she is probably one of the sweetest human beings you'll ever come in contact with. And her channel is really all about making yoga accessible to all levels, and really her with a huge focus on sort of that personal well-being and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves so that out of that we can sort of um, you know not take care of, but like really invest in the people around us in a healthy way by taking care of ourselves first. And that's been really huge. And I mean, obviously, like we talked about having a support system. I have a few key people, some awesome ladies in my life, and one guy who's kind of ended up being sort of a father figure to me that I know I can text at 2 o'clock in the morning, or call randomly and be like, hey, I'm not okay. Um, I I was traveling overseas and had something happen, and I knew it was kind of one of those like dad conversations. So I text my friend, and I mean it was morning-ish my time, so it was like 2 o'clock in the morning their time, and was like, I need help. And they were there, and that was so huge. And I think a huge part of that is kind of figuring out, there's not one person is going to necessarily be able to A, be available, or B, sort of meet you in the place that you're at. So having a couple of people that you can reach out to. I know if there's certain things that I'm struggling with, so and so is really going to be able to resonate with that, and so I won't have to, or maybe there's somebody who knows my story better than others, so I'm not going to have to give a lot of backstory. I can just be like, XYZ, here it is. So having a few people like that is really helpful. um Other ways, I've started recognizing even just the beauty of stopping and taking a few deep breaths in a moment,
Mhm.
is huge, for sort of bringing yourself down from a ledge of any nature, whether it's anger or depression or anxiety can be really huge. And for me, I think the hardest one, but what oftentimes is a huge sort of starter for really processing things, is literally just stopping everything. And it sounds strange, but almost just like staring at the wall and allowing whatever is in the moment to sort of come up. It's really easy, even with the things that we know are healthy for us, like journaling or, listening to a good podcast or, painting or any of those things that can help. I've found I can still use to sort of distract myself when what I really need to do is just stop and allow myself to feel whatever it is that's there, and sort of let that out. And then on the other side of that, that's when I can pick up a pen or, turn on a yoga session or what have you, because I've sort of released it and then it's more accessible to deal with. So
Mr. Rogers, if it's mentionable, it's manageable.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, I do that a lot. Well, I mean, I annoy people with this sometimes because like something will be going on. Often when I annoy people, it's politics, where like something will happen and I'll just be like, they're doing that because of this, and I'll like say the motive, and people will be like, we all know that. Why are you saying it? We all know it. I'm like, because if it's mentionable, it's manageable. Which is silly, but like in my brain, like for anxiety, it's a real thing. Like if it's mentionable, it's manageable is stuck in my brain from watching Mr. Rogers as a kid, right?
Yeah.
And so like I'm not gonna get political. But like if something happens and I'm like, oh, that's just a clearly racist thing the government's doing, or like, oh, cool, people are gonna die because of the thing that they're not doing right. Like I'll say it. I'll just say it out loud. Like I have to, because if I say it out loud, my brain goes, that's manageable.
Yep.
Like there's a solve. Like bottling it up, like literally just saying a sentence is super, super helpful. And writing stuff down. Yeah, I do often, probably not every day, but reasonably often, just kind of lie on my bed for 5 or 10 minutes and just kind of breathe and do nothing and just kind of like let myself feel whatever's going on, run through how the day's going, and then reshape. I've been working really hard on one of the biggest things, which I weirdly picked up from more context clues than him outwardly saying it, but from Dax Shepard's podcast. I just noticed that when he talks, because he has a lot of mental stuff, that when he talks, he will make a joke and then positively frame whatever's going on, or frame it as positively as possible. And it's nothing he doesn't say that's what he's doing, but I just realized that's what he does. So whenever it gets like super serious, like he was sexually abused, and so he'll talk about it and then he'll make an off-color joke and then positively frame like, here's the good that's happened because I had this experience. And he'll like constantly spin it off and he'll make a joke, positively frame. And I do it in my head. I just started like, oh, well, he's well-adjusted and rich and famous, and I like him, and I just started doing it. So I just started like in my head, I'll make a joke about whatever's stressing me out or causing depression, and then I'll try to like frame it positively, which usually works, not always, but it's definitely really helpful. Just ideas that seem to work for me. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. I mean, not only is it great to see you and chat with you, but it's good to be able to sort of voice things. Like you said, I mean, even just sort of saying things out loud can be really, really healing and helpful. So.
Hey guys, Josh here. I just wanted to touch base and let you guys know, if this is a show that is connecting with you and is powerful to you, and you want to maybe be on the show and kind of talk through some of the stuff you got going on, go ahead and email into our email, checkinguppodcast@gmail.com, and we'll try to get you on the show. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening.